right will not admit that the Comstock Act would mean arrests for abortion. This is fascinating. Melissa Gira Grant, writing at thenewrepublic.com, she writes about, let me just quote the first paragraph. About a half hour before the Supreme Court heard oral arguments last month in Food and Drug Administration versus Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, the case that's become the Christian right's next big bet on ending abortion, a cluster of anti-abortion activists gathered on the court's steps to call for the prosecution of people who had obtained mifepristone, a drug used in more than 60% of abortions in this country, through the mail. Several men in the group held signs specifically urging the enforcement of the Comstock Act, a 151-year-old anti-obscenity law that was used at the turn of the century, to 20th century, to arrest people for sharing information and items used for abortion and contraception. One sign quoted Matthew Kaczmarek, the federal judge in Texas who originally heard the mifepristone challenge, quote, "The Comstock Act plainly forecloses mail-order abortion." In March, 145 Republican members of Congress signed on to an amicus brief in this case, FDA versus Hippocratic, supporting the Comstock Act. All Republicans, 145 members of Congress petitioned the Supreme Court to say, bring back the Comstock Act. Their brief alleges that the Comstock Act is still enforceable. It is, by the way, still on the books. And that the FDA was, quote, blatantly disregarding the federal law's prohibition on the mailing and interstate shipment of abortion-inducing drugs, end quote. The article in the New Republic goes on to note that Senators Katie Britt, Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley were each asked whether they support using the Comstock Act to, quote, prosecute those who obtain mifepristone through the mail, including those who use the pill for the purposes of self-managing their own abortion. Representatives Robert Alderhoff, Lauren Boebert, Jim Jordan, and Elise Stefanik were asked the same question. None of them responded to the inquiry from the New Republic. So very strange stuff. The Republican-backed campaign to revive the Comstock Act as a national abortion ban is happening right now out in the open, this author notes, but Democrats have not sufficiently acknowledged the threat. I agree. It's why it was last week or the week before, I published a piece about, Anthony Comstock. He's trying to reach up out of the grave to take down America's women. And, we need to do something about that. But I don't know, it seems to be a low priority for Democrats, sadly. Meanwhile, Arizona's forced birth fascists just revived this abortion ban from 1864. But here's what's wild about this. I mean, this is all over the news. I mean, you'd have to be living under a rock not to know that yesterday the Supreme Court of Arizona said all abortions, except to save the life of the mother, are now officially banned. Rape, we don't care. Incest, we don't care. Destroy your life, we don't care. So remember Carrie Lake? She's this wackadoodle who ran for governor against the current governor. She had run for another position before that, and in both cases she lost, and in both cases she started squealing like a stuck pig that, a la Donald Trump. It was rigged, it's a fraudulent election, there was fake, So anyhow, she comes out yesterday. This tells you how Republicans are waking up to the toxicity of this position that they have held for 43 years now. Yesterday, Carrie Lake came out and said, I oppose today's ruling, and I'm calling on Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs and the state legislature to come up with an immediate common sense solution that Arizonans can support. Oh, really? Keep in mind, during the 2022 debate, this was her debate with the governor when she was running for governor, Carrie Lake said she hoped that the Supreme Court would do the right thing and overturn Roe. This was before the Dobbs decision. And then she talked about what would happen to to Arizona if that happened. She said, quote, we have a great law in the books right now. If that happens, if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, we will have a state where we will not be taking the lives of unborn children anymore. So she was for the law before she's against it. Same thing with former Republican Governor Doug Ducey. He said, the ruling today is not the outcome I would have preferred, and I call on our elected leaders to heed the will of the people. Right. But when he signed the 15-week abortion ban in 2022, again before the Dobbs decision, he stated clearly that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, this new 15-week ban will go away and be replaced by the 1864 law. And not only that, he appointed 5 of the 7 justices to the Arizona Supreme Court. All 5 of his appointees were the 5 who voted to outlaw all abortions in Arizona. Hypocrisy much? But here you've got the former governor and the candidate for governor both running as fast as they can for the exits. We're going to see more of this. Meanwhile, in Arizona, the Arizona Freedom Caucus, you know, I call them the Cokehead Caucus, generally speaking, because they get all this money from the Coke Network. They issued a statement yesterday about the pro-life ruling. This is what they said. Today, the Supreme Court of Arizona made the correct ruling, upheld the intent of the legislature, and preserved the rule of law today by ruling that the pre-Roe law will remain effective. Right. How Orwellian is that? This is the Freedom Caucus saying, yes, take away the freedom of women. It's amazing. One of these people said, if you had to travel to another state to get an abortion, it's not the worst thing in the world buying a bus ticket to go somewhere to get. It is not the worst thing in the world. Right. And Jeff Tiedrich says, in response to that, he says, you heard right, little Miss 10-year-old rape victim. Just hop on a bus. I'm sure the stepfather who raped you will pay for your ticket. It's that easy. Now dry your eyes and quit complaining. Yeah. This is how Republicans are viewing this. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. Authoritarian leadership and ADHD. I have a new post over at hunterandafarmersworld.com, my website for people with attention deficit disorder. And I'm speculating that ADHD people are more likely to rebel against authority. They're more likely to be the people who are, you know, on the front lines against tyranny. And Timothy Engelman, who is a physician who treats adult ADHD people in Pennsylvania, wrote, part of the problem consists on a social cultural level. Our society, as you point out in your Hunter's book, is becoming increasingly rigid and rooted in the structure of experience. Problems arise from rigid structuring. People vary in their ability to conform to this way of life, especially the ADHD person, who in repeated failures to respond to such structuring becomes labeled as disordered. More disturbing, however, is that such structuring can be used as forms of social influence, which I believe limits the very nature of who we are as people. Amen. Another physician, Dr. Engelman, points out, as social control becomes more pressing, the ADHD way of life actually becomes not only an asset, but an antidote to such a limiting experience. Fascinating stuff. On the other side of the break here, I've got a geeky science for you that is absolutely amazing. How we can save 700,000 lives, including possibly yours. And a crazy alert, a very, very weird MAGA influencer has a suggestion about how to deal with the bird flu.